Hi, this week we're going to take a look at whether we really know what our plugins are doing to the mix. I think most of us know conceptually what an EQ is and what a compressor is, etc. But do we actually know what it is doing, even in the default state, once it's applied to a track? So to test that, I have Plugin Doctor open. Plugin Doctor is fantastic. It's quite cheap as well. I think it's only 22 euros. I will test it with this AMEK EQ200. Not for any particular reason other than the fact that it's the one I bought the most recently. So at the moment it's bypassed, and let's turn it on and let's see what it is doing to the signal. So immediately, once it is turned on, you can see that there's a high cut. It looks around 50 Hertz. So it's possible that there's a high cut function in here. We can go search for that later. Also, there's a bit of instability here in this line. I'm not sure whether that's just a GPU issue or whether it's actually modeling the non-linearity in an AMEK, in an analog unit. In addition to the low cuts here, there's also a very steep high cut, although it starts around 9,000. Looks like it's about a maybe 96 dB slope, so quite steep. Whether or not these are audible is a different story altogether, but the point is that I would apply this to the mix in its default state and I would expect it to be flat. Rightly or wrongly, that's a different story, but it's really just an expectation that I have, and I think most people would have. So let's look what we have. First of all, let's see if we can find this low cut here. High pass at 20. Let's cut it. Okay, fantastic. We have that off. But now we can see there is a bit of a shelf there. It's not much. It's about maybe half a dB, perhaps, a bit less. But the point is that it's still doing something to the signal. I think also at this point it's worth reiterating that just because we can see this impact to the signal, I'm not saying at all that this is a negative factor or a negative thing that this plugin is introducing. It's really just acknowledging that it does make a change to the signal, so if you're intending to use it, just be aware of what it is doing. We got rid of the low cut by removing this high pass. I assume this will do the same with the low pass. That's interesting. It got rid of it a little bit, but it still has a very strong filter at 20k. We have Mono Maker here, which is currently switched on. Let's turn that off. So there we go. By clicking on Mono Maker, it is boosting the signal at, it looks like 20 Hertz, which is defined by this. I assume once we turn this up, there we go. It is boosting that signal. We'll take that off, and it goes back to flat again. Stereo width doesn't seem to do anything, in terms of the signal, of course. THD is the distortion, so let's see what this does. At the moment, it's on minus 75. I can't really see a impact there. Then if we go through the bands, let's have a look. So let's turn them off one by one, and we'll focus on the low. So we have a low shelf here. Let's put the low shelf on. We can choose the frequency, and then let's boost. So here what we can tell is that there's a disparity between the left and right signal. You can see the pink is the left or right, and then the cyan is the other channel. Also, you can see that once it gets to about 10 Hertz, there's a slight roll off, maybe a 6 or a 12 dB filter there at 10 Hertz. That stays the same regardless of whether we move the frequency or the cutoff up. And it's also the same if we take it as a cut versus a boost. Let's change it to a bell. So here down the bottom of the left is the wide Q, and then we turn it up and it becomes narrow. So again, we can see the disparity there between the left and right signals. And they're not consistent either. It doesn't make a difference, it's just an observation again. So one channel is higher here, and then it goes even, and then below here. Which again, it's just modeling the analog intricacies of this unit, I assume. So this, in terms of modeling an analog unit, it helps to build character. That is all well and good. It's just acknowledging that it does do this to the signal. So if you're going to put it on, just be aware that this is what it's doing. Let's go to the low. No surprises here really, so wide band to narrow. Again, left and right, you got the disparity. I assume that's going to be the same for the other bands as well, no major surprises. And then the high. We still have this roll off here, which I'm unable to get rid of. I should point out it's at 20,000 Hertz, so you probably won't be able to hear that anyway. At the higher end, the disparity is quite a bit more pronounced between the left and right. It's a bit closer with a wider band, but then when it gets narrow, it splits out a little bit more. Although when you sweep it, it's quite consistent between left and right. Which we saw that was different to the low. If we boost, and then we sweep, we can see that it's not consistent. At the higher end, it's consistent. Then when it's low, it starts to jump around a bit in the bass region. And then what else do we have? Let's put these back on again. And then over here we have the low pass and high pass, which is the same, it's just linked. Then down the bottom we have the input gain, which is quite straightforward. There's no surprises there really, which is good. We have stereo mode here. I wonder if that is the driver of the left and right disparity that we saw earlier. So here we can see they're quite pronounced, left and right. Let's click on random. Here we go, yes. So if we click on random channel, then they move. I assume also if we bring this down to, so if we take off stereo mode and then we choose them both on the same, then they're identical, which is quite a nice feature because then you get the slight delta between the left and right, which then gives a bit more of a stereo field to it. On 11 and 12 they seem to be quite close. Not sure whether these are random numbers. 9, 10. Yeah, they appear to be quite random. So 8 and 9 is quite a big delta. It's quite a nice feature. I like that. And then mid side, I assume is making them the same, so we don't have the delta there. And then a parameter link is quite obvious. That's just linking up here the top channels. And THD we went through before. So what's the summary of all of this? I should point out also that this is just chosen at random. This AMEK EQ, it is already one of my favorite EQs. So anything that I said here certainly isn't a negative because I love this plugin. What I wanted to do was actually learn it more so that I can start using it more, and then I can use it with confidence, with knowing what each knob does or each function does. So it's quite easy to say, yeah, I know what an EQ does. I know if I boost a band, it will increase the level in that area. But I wasn't aware of the certain idiosyncrasies that this particular unit has, such as the high pass filter at 20. So this may or may not be an issue. Now that I know, when I put it on the master, for example, I know to expect this. I also know that if it's the left and right deltas are too much, I know that's a result of these two stereo channels here. I know now that I can make them the same to make them identical, or if they're too pronounced like this, I can click on random and I can bring them closer together. I also know that if I choose mono maker, I know to expect a boost in the low end. I can either compensate for that, or I know now to expect it and then to back it off on the master. So this plugin doctor I would thoroughly recommend. It has become essential to every time I get a new plugin, the first thing I do is run it through Plugin Doctor. I can spend 2 or 3 hours reading the manual, trying to understand every function, or I can load it in Plugin Doctor, and within 10 minutes, I know exactly what every function does. I have no idea what the manual says on this, but I'm sure whatever words they use to describe this feature, they're nowhere near as easy to understand as it is just simply loading it up in here. So I would thoroughly recommend getting Plugin Doctor. I would thoroughly recommend running all of your new plugins through it to understand exactly what they do. It will save you loads of time, loads of random knob twiddling, trying to understand the functions, and you will know with absolute confidence what every function does. So I hope that helped, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, bye.